Right, so we'll make a start. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Displaced Talent Mobility webinar with Talent Beyond Boundaries and Fragomen. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. My name is Sarah Walder, and I'll be your moderator. I am a volunteer at Talent Beyond Boundaries, and I am very excited to be hosting this session today to let you know more about the work that TBB do and how we can be good for your business. For this event, TBB are joining forces with immigration lawyers and advisors Fragomen, and we will be hearing from them later. Before we start, a few housekeeping points. Please ensure you're muted. We will be recording the webinar, so if you'd like to be anonymous, please anonymize your name now. After the event, we will email you a link to the recording. We would love to hear your questions and thoughts, so please write them in the chat box as we go along. And Ian Robinson from Fragomen will answer them in a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. The focus of this event is the UK, but we are grateful to have callers from as far and wide as the US, Belgium, and Switzerland. We would love to hear from you on how to take this model of displaced talent mobility far and wide. We'll also be doing a poll just before the Q&A that will pop up on your screen, and there will be more information about that later. I will also quickly address the elephant in the room. So COVID-19 has impacted our lives in so many different ways, and you may be questioning why you should look at hiring from a new talent pool when unemployment is rising, or even whether you should be hiring now when hiring freezes have affected so many companies. Firstly, you should hire through TBB because of our candidates. They're experienced, skilled, and work in industries like technology, engineering, and healthcare, where their skills are in short supply. After COVID, of course, it's expected that unemployment levels will be higher than normal, but it's very likely there will still be shortages in certain key areas. And secondly, good skilled people are always in short supply, and the pandemic has caused extra delays in our hiring model. So even though there may be currently hiring freezes now would actually be a really good time for you to start building pipelines so you're ready for when hiring starts up again. So today you're going to hear from some really wonderful people who will work with you to make it easy to focus on one thing, the hiring. So you can see our speakers on the agenda on your screen now. So first, our special guest, David Manikum from the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, will kick off the event with a few words. Then our keynote speaker, human rights barrister Sangeeta Iyengar, will tell us about the refugee crisis and the importance of complementary pathways. Sangeeta will be followed by our own UK director, Marina Brazil, explaining why TBB exists. Next, we will hear a lived experience from our pioneering candidate, Khalif Abd, and his manager at Iris, Charlotte Holland. Gemma Hislop from Fragomen will then tell us about the immigration process in the UK, and will be followed by Matthew Powell, CEO of Breaking Barriers, who will talk about our partnership. And finally, Ian Robinson, a partner at Fragomen, will answer your questions in the Q&A. So first, I will introduce David Manikum. David was born in Ingersoll, Ontario. He studied at the University of Toronto and McGill University in Montreal before embarking on a diplomatic career, taking him to Moscow, Islamabad, Beijing, Geneva, and New Delhi. He most recently served as Assistant Deputy Minister for Settlement and Integration in the Canadian Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and now holds the position of Special Advisor in the Division of International Protection at UNHCR. David, over to you to say a few words and kick off the event.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you all today in this very exciting and innovative forum for finding mutually beneficial solutions for communities, business, and refugees. I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes of your time to get us started. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all today in this innovative forum for finding mutually beneficial solutions for communities, business, and refugees. I spent many years of my career facilitating global mobility in Canadian immigration offices in places like Moscow, Beijing, and Delhi, including working with Fragomen's clients and Fragomen as a firm, both in operational and policy settings. For example, the office I ran in New Delhi worked closely both with global IT companies to relocate global talent and with UNHCR in Eastern Nepal to resettle Bhutanese refugees. So that combination of perspectives is in this virtual room. That's the combination I'm convinced is essential to solving some of the biggest challenges of our time. The Global Compact on Refugees, adopted by the UN General Assembly 2 years ago, is founded on the concept of multi-stakeholder partnerships, of public-private partnership, of making nice-sounding phrases like whole of society, real tools to solve problems. So what two challenges in my mind sum up why we are here? Your companies need the best talent, using that word in the broadest sense, which I will come back to succeed and generate profits for you and your stakeholders, and to bring wealth and innovation to the broader communities where you are situated. The world's many millions of refugees and other displaced people need safe homes. Some of them have what you need. Some of you have what they need. So it would make a lot of sense if you met each other. Fragomen and Talent Beyond Boundaries, and yes, UNHCR, are part of a global ecosystem, partly still imagined, partly being built to make those meetings happen. Is this the right thing for your company to do morally, or is it the smart thing for you to do in your own interests? I think we say yes to both questions. I could tell you a dozen reasons why it's the right thing to do, but I think you know that or you wouldn't be on this call. I want to reflect for a moment though on that word refugee. It's a legal category under international law and individuals who have special protection needs. But neither we nor refugees themselves want that word to define them fully any more than any of us wish to be defined by the category on our work permit, on our passports, our color, our gender, and so forth. Refugees are fathers and mothers, students, accountants, chefs, truck drivers, and software programmers who have lost their homes through no fault of their own and need a new one. A new home, a new community, a new employer. Secretary General Guterres, also a former UNHCR High Commissioner, wrote this spring that the COVID crisis is an opportunity to reimagine human mobility for the benefit of all. Mutual benefit is the key to really growing solutions. When reimagining mobility, we need to ensure our systems provide basic fairness to those to whom we attach the word refugee, so that they benefit proportionally from the global large-scale flow of legal and orderly migration. I think it's a mutual responsibility that I share with all of you. Leveling the playing field is only fair, but it's also to your benefit. As I conclude, imagine adding the skill sets and motivation that you and your coworkers have to succeed in your particular company. Imagine having all of that and adding degrees of perspective, resilience, agility, entrepreneurialism, and motivation for a safe home for you and your children and your loved ones that luckily we can only imagine. Imagine having both of those skill sets and that motivation, that degree of perspective and resilience. It's the right thing to do, and it's a smart thing to do. I suggest that not having in your company that combination of skill and talent and that combination of human perspective, resilience, and motivation means your company may be pretty good in the long run, but not the best. I leave you with those thoughts and back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, David. So next up, I am very pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Sangeeta Iyengar, a human rights barrister, writer, and activist. Sangeeta's passion to help refugees and other vulnerable people access their rights really resonates here with us at TBB. Sangeeta recently spent 2 years leading a European Commission project to improve access to rights for undocumented children and families in Europe. She currently provides pro bono advice to migrants arriving on the first shores of Europe, seeing firsthand the challenges that refugees face. Sangeeta, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd like first to paint a picture of the global displacement crisis for you all, a picture in numbers. before then exploring how displaced talent mobility can restore human rights and improve those numbers to paint a more mutually beneficial picture, as David says. Today, there are at least 80 million people around the world who have been displaced from their homes because of conflict and human rights violations, more than at any time since the Second World War. Nearly a third of those have been forced to cross an international border in search for protection. So where their state is unable to ensure the fundamental human rights of their citizens, a neighboring host country like Lebanon or Jordan become the substitute provider of those rights. And that is refugee protection as it was first envisaged. But the problem is that protection is intended to last a finite period of time until refugees can return back home. Yet today, half of the world's refugees are in a protracted refugee situation where the average length of time in refuge, so in that period of limbo, is 25 years. And with the causes for displacement diversifying, experts now believe environmental change factors like wildfires that we've seen recently and water insecurity will be significant new causes for displacement. So we can expect all of those numbers in that picture to continue to rise. On the other hand, human rights, in international law, freedom of movement is a fundamental human right. Article 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights provides that everyone has the right to freedom of movement, the right to leave the country, including their own, and a right to return to that country. But in reality, forcibly displaced people have been stripped of that right because they aren't viewed as skilled or as potential economic actors. And the problem is how we've conceptualized this concept of refuge. Displacement has long since been seen as a problem, not just a problem, but one that has to be approached with a magnanimous lens of charity or compassion. But let's look at global displacement at that picture dispassionately and objectively. If people are routinely displaced for an average of 25 years, leaving them in host nations entirely dependent on aid, doesn't work for them. They lose their skills, their agency. It doesn't benefit the host nation, provides no net fiscal gain to the community, and no impact or interaction whatsoever with all of us, with the private sector. So an example, Lebanon, where TBB work, I have clients there who are engineers, IT consultants, and accountants who purely because of war have fled Syria. And despite their talents, their valuable and needed talents, they don't have the right to work legally in Lebanon because they are displaced people. So they're qualified, but because of displacement, they have to let their skills lie dormant. Whilst employers, like all of you on the call in the UK, face critical skills shortages, which I'm sure are only likely to exacerbate with Brexit looming on the horizon. The only way all of those talented individuals can enter the UK is through irregular means. The system doesn't work. What we need is a system where skilled, highly employable people are not rendered dependent on aid for the majority of their working lives. We need a mechanism in which displaced individuals with skills can be identified to UK employers like yourselves who need those skills. And we need complementary legal pathways for those skilled displaced people to exercise that human right, fundamental human right of freedom of movement to places that want their skills. That is displaced talent mobility. It offers talented refugees with the specific skills you identify as requiring to leverage their professional capital to secure a job and move out of displacement, out of vulnerability into integrated settlement. So on arrival in the UK, they aren't merely refugees laden with this heavy term, but workers immediately economically and fiscally active, let alone socially contributing to the community. So what this requires is not a lens of charity or humanitarian compassion, but pragmatism, approaching displacement not as a problem, but a commercial opportunity, And that's what Displaced Talent Mobility offers to employers, access to a much wider pool of global talent. By making that pragmatic business decision to fill skills gaps from a global community, you also restore human rights to this vulnerable group and offer a pathway out of displacement. So it isn't charity, it's commercial pragmatism. I think, as David says, the private sector can and should, through this model that TBB and Fragomen have conceived of, play a crucial role in flattening the curve, a phrase we're very familiar with right now, from human tragedy to optimizing mobility for mutual gain. With you, displaced talent mobility can be a reality in the UK. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. So our next speaker is Talent Beyond Boundaries' own UK director, Marina Brazil. Marina herself grew up in a refugee camp. Her family fled conflict in Bosnia before settling in Australia. Surrounded by people in the refugee camp who were talented and skilled but not allowed to work, Marina saw firsthand how taking away work rights takes away people's dignity. This experience inspired Marina to become an immigration lawyer. Her work has been recognised by the Law Council of Australia with an award for Young Migration Lawyer of the Year and the Women Lawyers Association with an award for Women Lawyer of the Year up and coming. She was also named in the 100 Women of Influence and is a Churchill Fellow. Today, Marina will talk to you about why Talent Beyond Boundaries exists and why labour mobility is so important.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Sarah. And thank you for posing the problem for us, Sangeeta. I think that what Sangeeta did was a really great runway for what I'm about to speak to. And what I speak to is a solution. But I am going to start with a question. And that is, can you imagine a world where people are able to move countries for work opportunity based on their skills, their experience, irrespective of their labels or their circumstances? It sounds simple enough, perhaps for the global mobility professionals among us, even obvious, but for forcibly displaced people, of which there are almost 80 million, including refugees, stateless people, and people living in refugee-like circumstances, international skilled migration is far from simple. But that is why we exist. Talent Beyond Boundaries is the first organisation in the world to focus on labour mobility as a complementary pathway to humanitarian resettlement. In its simplest form, our model connects skilled refugees with skilled work and skilled visa pathways as a ticket out of displacement. This model is powered by Talent Beyond Boundaries innovation, the Talent Catalogue. The Talent Catalogue features over 20,000 candidates, and by year's end will feature 30,000 candidates who represent over 150 occupations, including in healthcare, technology, engineering, professional services, and education. Here are some of the statistics from the Talent Catalogue drawn out only yesterday. Our candidates are primarily based in Lebanon and Jordan, and so far have been placed in positions in Australia and Canada in their hundreds. The UK is our new frontier, and it is why we are speaking to you today. We need employer partners to champion displaced talent mobility as a solution, which is not only the good thing to do, the right thing to do, but the more and more you are involved, you will see that it is the smart thing to do. So we'll soon hear from Halef about his experience as our first labour mobility candidate in the UK. He will be in conversation with his manager from Iris, a multinational financial services firm who has recruited TBB candidates in Sydney, Melbourne, and in Cheltenham. Halef's experience taught us that international employment and visa options are viable, and that through safe, legal, and regular visa pathways, including the Tier 2 visa, people can be lifted out of displacement. Now, from the perspective of the gentleman here in the black shirt, Andrew Walsh, who is the CEO of Iris, he says, "It strikes me as both unfair and inefficient that we're unable to match talented refugees with companies desperate for skilled employees. That's why we're here today. Andrew is proud of the pioneering role that IRIS has played in proving both that labour mobility can be done and that there are significant positive impacts for the economy and society as a whole when it is done. Even with the rise of virtual working as a result of a pandemic, it is Andrew's view and belief that video technology doesn't solve the problem of displacement. And for this reason, he has committed, and IRIS have committed as a firm, to building recruitment pipelines which are inclusive of displaced talent candidates now and into the future. So here are 3 things that we know. First, there are many thousands of skilled refugees living in displacement in Lebanon and Jordan. And 30,000 seems like an opportunity, but when you think about it on the other side, it is a colossal waste of talent and of human capital. You match with that the fact that in the UK, there are skill shortages which are exacerbated by the pandemic and which cannot be filled by the local labour market. Even with high unemployment, highly skilled positions cannot merely be resolved. And finally, employers in the UK employ candidates on the basis of merit through competitive recruitment processes. International sponsorship is often required for the right candidate. So why can that right candidate not be a person who is forcibly displaced? This is displaced talent mobility in action. I've tried to simplify it as much as possible while keeping it quite comprehensive. But basically, the model requires that an employer provides us with a job description of a position that they would like to fill. TBB then provides a number of candidates who meet the selection criteria. Once employers shortlist the candidates, we can provide one-way interviews of the candidates for further shortlisting or for invitation to a normal two-way interview, which can be facilitated at our offices in Beirut and Amman. We can then facilitate and monitor recruitment tests like coding tests or psychometric tests. If and when an offer is extended, we either connect you to our immigration partners at Fragomen and/or work with your mobility teams to facilitate visa and travel arrangements. With employers and our partners on the ground, including Breaking Barriers, who we'll hear from later, we work together to ensure that following initial reception and initial arrival into the UK, that displaced talent candidates are supported fully in their integration journey and on their journey to citizenship of the UK. In every step of this odyssey, and I specifically chose that word odyssey over journey, we work with local and specialist partners in recruitment, in immigration and integration processes. TBB intend to have a presence in the UK only for as long as we are necessary before handing over to partners to scale that model. So as I've said, you will hear from Fragomen about the migration piece, Breaking Barriers on the integration and the outreach piece. But all this is to say that we work in partnership to hush the noise that is involved with displaced talent mobility, so that, as Sarah said, you can focus only on hiring the most skilled, the best and brightest talent. So we've touched a little bit on the human rights aspects of this work. We also had a fantastic introduction by David from UNHCR at the top of the program. And I wanted to talk you through some of the guiding principles which dictate what displaced talent mobility seeks to achieve. Now, the first is that we are building a model that is employer-led. This approach acknowledges that employers are the best judge of suitability for employment, and so should be able to determine and drive this recruitment selection processes leading to visa suitability. And we are doing everything that we can in terms of our advocacy to ensure that employer-led model is at the fore of our program. The second guiding principle is empowerment and autonomy. By placing displaced people in charge of the decisions about where they want to live and the ability to seek visas based on secured opportunities. We have heard many times of candidates who secure a job, but find obstacles in actually getting a visa. And what we're trying to do is streamline the process to give empowerment and autonomy into the entire process. The third and perhaps most important from my perspective, is the idea of equitable access, of leveling the playing field, so that forcibly displaced people are able to compete on a level playing field with candidates who are not living in displacement. I'm sure you can all hear my Australian accent. And my comparison for this is, if as an Australian I get a job and I get access to a visa, the same should be available to a stateless person living in displacement in Lebanon. The fourth is fundamental, and that is that the model is refugee-centered. The design, the monitoring, the evaluation of any pilot, of any program, of any partnership that we have always comes down to the experience of the forcibly displaced person at the core, so that we know how to be better and more streamlined in our impact and in our scaling. Additionality is a key factor, and additionality means that displaced talent is an additional and a complementary pathway to humanitarian resettlement, which is reserved for the most vulnerable refugees. And finally, the protection element. Protection against forced return to a country of persecution, against discrimination, exploitation, as well as some fundamental things like access to legal documentation services and pathways to indefinite leave to remain and citizenship being a durable solution. So today we invite you as representatives of the private sector to be part of this humanitarian solution. Considering and offering a position to a forcibly displaced person not only fills a skill shortage, but gives them and their families a second chance of life in the UK. And to this end, we have two simple asks. The first is, give us a role and let us show you our talent. There is no obligation, there is no cost, there is no risk. We are confident that our candidates will impress you. The second aspect is business buy-in. Put us in touch with key stakeholders, decision makers, management, who we can pitch to show them that this, again, is not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do. All we are trying to do here is open up an unseen talent pool and ensure that they are able to move from country A to country B for the benefit of all, what we call a win-win-win. Advocacy is a key part of our work. And recently, together with Fragomen and the RAMP project, we proposed an amendment to the EU immigration bill to create a bespoke displaced talent visa, which Gemma will touch on later today. We hope that this will streamline immigration pathways for forcibly displaced people. And on that note, I wanted to leave you with a statement of the Bishop of Durham, who addressed the House of Lords about this amendment on the 13th of September. He said, "In places like Lebanon, people fleeing the Syrian conflict are not permitted to work legally. They are dependent on handouts, their lives are on hold. Many of these people have God-given talents which are going to waste. Meanwhile, employers in the UK face critical skill shortages. Ending free movement for the EEA and Swiss nationals will only make it more challenging for them to recruit people with skills they require. Is it beyond our imagination to connect the two for the benefit of all?" Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. So at the core of Talent Beyond Boundaries are our displaced people, people who have spent years training and gaining qualifications for their profession before their lives are disrupted by conflict. Displaced people and refugees who have fled to Lebanon and Jordan are either not allowed to work or can only work in low-paid, low-skilled jobs, which leads to so much wasted talent. But Talent Beyond Boundaries is not a charity. This is a business opportunity. We see this in Halef, our pioneering UK candidate. Halef is an experienced Syrian software engineer who now works for Iris in Cheltenham. I will now play a short video where Halef describes his lived experience and journey with TBB and Iris.
Before the war, when I was in Syria, I don't have big goals, just stable life with my family and improve my IT skills. All the doors were locked, actually. There is no life at all.
we've had a fantastic opportunity to recruit Khalif, who has both the skill set and capability to fill roles which we find really, really difficult to fill. In terms of the process we went through, it was very robust. We treated the TBB candidates exactly the same as all candidates.
The day when I learned that I got offer, it's like someone in deep wall and you throw rope for him. We will always memorize these moments.
So now I will hand over to TBB volunteer and advocate Akshaya Shakaran, who will lead a Q&A with Khalif and Charlotte Holland, delivery and engineering team lead at Iris. So over to you guys now.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. So I'll start with a question for Khalif. Could you please just tell us a bit more about your background and how you came to the UK?
Oh, good afternoon. Yeah, well, I will start from Syria. I graduated as a software engineer from informatics technology faculty at Aleppo University. When life started to become worse and more dangerous in Syria, I was forced to leave. I hope that maybe Lebanon was a better and safer place to live until Syria recovered again. Unfortunately, life was not easy in Lebanon, especially when the Lebanese government started to set many new restrictions for Syrians, not allowing us to work, having identity documents or bank accounts, well, any service. Then I found myself working illegally. After that, I heard about TBB from my friends. I think some of them now in Canada and others in Australia. Through TBB, they were able to leave Lebanon and get a work. I think their life now is better. I registered with TBB. I got a great help to improve my English skills in general. And then TBB connected me with Iris. They gave me a good description about Iris, which make me more excited about the opportunity. Iris invited me to some interviews as a normal any candidates. I remember I did 3 interviews and one of them was a coding, which I passed with distinction. Then I was offered as a job software engineer in Cheltenham. Then after that, we applied for a Tier 2 visa and I got the accept in August 2019. After that, me and my wife and my 2 daughters moved to the UK to our new life.
Thank you. And Charlotte, could you please speak to us a bit more about Iris's involvement with TBB?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I think that Iris's initial involvement with TBB is driven a lot by our CEO, Andrew Walsh. I think it's a cause that's particularly close to his heart. And I personally haven't had much involvement till Khalif joined the team. But I know that from seeing kind of other members that have joined, so we've got 2 guys in Australia, that actually they have been really good people to join the business. And when Khalif joined the team, so we'd actually had a team member leave our team, and at the time we couldn't find anyone to fill the role. We actually were struggling to find the right person for it, and then we were told that we had this candidate who's Khalif, and he joined the team in August last year, and actually it's been really good for us. We've really enjoyed having him in the team. So I feel like, yeah, from Iris's involvement, it's definitely a project that's close to the senior management's heart, but actually being down on the ground, I can understand that now, and I really value that.
Thank you. And now that Khalif has been with the team for a year, can you reflect on his journey as a manager?
Yeah, so Halif joined us last August, and I think, to be fair, Halif, you did kind of slot in really quickly with us. So there's a team of 8 of us, and Halif was our 9th team member. And we didn't really know what to expect when Halif joined. We weren't necessarily sure what he was capable of or how he would adjust. And I was incredibly impressed with how quickly he slotted in. We actually my particular team work in mortgages. So with Halif, it wasn't so much about being able to do the job. It was for him, it was learning about like the UK mortgage market. So actually the biggest area of learning we had for Halif was how that particular market works, but the skill set was already there. We didn't need to worry about training him up on the kind of the languages that we use. And you kind of slotted in really well. We created a buddy system, which we do for all our new starters. So Halif wasn't treated any differently from if we had someone else join the team. We tried to engage a buddy system for that. So that was really great. And actually Halif's improved, his English has improved over the year. We do a lot of social things together. So actually Halif has just slotted in like anybody else. And that's really great to see.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And Halif, what has surprised you most about life in the UK?
Yeah, many of things, but I will start with simple issues. I have the right to leave, to work, to open bank account. My children can go to school, and if I was sick, I can go to the hospital. All of that was not available in Lebanon.
Thank you. And do you follow the EPL? And who is your team?
Yeah, I already loved the Premier League even before coming to the UK. Well, I like Liverpool more than other teams. Maybe because Mo Salah, I don't know. But I was surprised that most of the people here are more serious than other places about football. So it's not easy to say that I love Liverpool between Man United fans. So yeah, that's it.
And one last question, Charlotte. What would you say to employers who are considering placement of displaced talent candidates?
So I'm coming at this from someone on the ground. It's not a cause that I was really aware of beforehand, so I want to be really clear with that. I think it's a really sensible option to do. I think that having Halif in the team there's a diversity part to that. He brings a different kind of culture and knowledge and experience, and as a team we all work really well together, and he's slotted into that. And we socialize together, as teams. I've met Halif's family, they've been very welcoming. We do things as a group outside of work with people from teams, and honestly, it just feels like having another person who maybe just came from abroad. You have international people that when work in different areas, and I guess the hardest bit potentially is getting used to a new culture and a new place to live. But Iris, from our perspective, we've supported Halif and his wife. Hitam's had English lessons. We help them get settled. But from a day-to-day perspective, it's almost kind of, it's just normal now. It's not a thing really. Halif is here, he's in our team, he works with us. And I wouldn't ever consider, personally for me, him as displaced, because he's just so integrated with us now. It doesn't seem like that. So I don't think you'd regret it. I think it's a really good thing to do to give back, but actually as well, you get benefit from it because there's someone who joins your team who's eager, who's keen, there's a great work ethic, and I couldn't fault it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Charlotte, Halif and Akshaya. So just to remind you that if you have any questions for Ian, put them in the chat box and he'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So up next, what does the immigration process look like for an employer who wants to hire a skilled displaced worker? Talent Beyond Boundaries' partnership with Fragomen and Breaking Barriers is there to make the immigration process easy for employers. This brings me to our next speaker. Gemma is a manager and solicitor at Fragomen with a particular focus on the points-based system and Tier 2 visa category. She also volunteers with a migration forum in London and provides legal support to a local human rights NGO. Over now to Gemma, who will tell us more about the immigration process and skilled visas.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction, and hello everyone. So it's a real pleasure to be here today, and I'm delighted to talk to you about the UK immigration system. Something I'm keen to stress, as has everyone who spoke today, is that the process that we are suggesting in terms of creating a specific visa route for displaced talent is not about changing the eligibility criteria at all. All of the people who work with TBB are eminently eligible for a UK visa. This situation is just because of their particular circumstances, applications are that little bit more complicated. So we're here to help facilitate that application process and remove the barriers of that particular demographic experience simply because they are displaced. So I would like to go on to just give a high-level overview of the visa system as it exists and the couple of examples of the issues that we will seek to resolve. And again, that's something that we, Fragomen and TBB, hope to focus on so you, the business, can focus on hiring these candidates. In terms of a high-level overview of the immigration system, the UK has a points-based system that was introduced first in 2008. You'll know that immigration in the UK is very much a political football, so it changes on a regular basis. It really is very dynamic. And it will change again significantly in January 2021 when free movement formally ends and a new immigration system will be introduced. For our purposes, the way in which the system will change is not hugely revelatory. The work permit system will actually remain broadly the same with one or two minor improvements, which actually come as a welcome surprise to those who use the system. However, the issues that we've identified so far would remain in place for those who are displaced and seeking to come to the UK on a work permit. Specifically, within the visa route that we have identified, Tier 2 of the points-based system, there is a subcategory called Tier 2 General, and that is a visa route that allows people to come to the UK to take up a skilled position to work for a particular sponsor. It is a visa route that is a route to settlement in the UK, so settlement akin to permanent residence or indefinite leave to remain. So it makes it a really appealing option for all parties because it means that you bring someone to the UK, you invest in them and their career, and they can stay and work here permanently. Because it is a route to settlement, there is an English language requirement to facilitate integration, etc., into the UK. Now, those of you who have worked with people applying under Tier 2 General will know that there are various ways in which you can meet that English language requirement. If you are the national of a majority English-speaking country, such as the US or New Zealand, for example, you will automatically meet that requirement. However, if you're not, there are a couple of other ways in which you can meet it. These particular methods of meeting the English language requirement can prove quite difficult if you are displaced. So you can meet it if you have a degree taught in English, or you can take an English language test. So to address those 2 points separately, a degree taught in English will also require a certificate from a commercial partner of the UK government called UK NARIC. Now, in order to get that, you need to provide a copy of your certificate, a copy of your transcripts. You will sometimes need a medium of instruction letter from your university to confirm that your degree was indeed taught in English. Now, if you are based in a refugee camp, obviously the availability of those documents is going to be extremely limited. The chance of you having them is slim to none. You could get replacements from your university, but if your university is in Syria, for example, it may not be functioning, or obtaining the documents may increase the lead-in time to you applying for your visa by a really significant period. The other option is an English language test. Now, again, if you're familiar with the UK immigration system, you'll know that those English language tests are few and far between. The UK authorities have very didactic terms about the tests that they will accept. And there are a great many people who want to take those tests. So again, it can be a month or so to get the test booked. And then getting the results also takes a really long time. So this is a particular issue that if you are displaced is going to be exacerbated by you being part of that particular demographic. So the options that we have suggested, that we've identified in working with TBB, are many, and there's a really good, useful immigration precedent within our current legal system to support that. So, for example, We could proceed on the basis that the person making the application has a presumed good working level of English, so they are granted the visa, and then they are tested once in the UK or at a later date when applying for indefinite leave to remain. There's precedent in that in terms of, for example, the new visa route that will be made available to British nationals overseas, so people applying from Hong Kong. That visa route will come into place next year, and those individuals will be able to make applications without having to first prove their English language requirement. Alternatively, perhaps the applicants, instead of submitting evidence of the English language requirement through those very narrow channels, could be interviewed. Again, there's precedent for that for Tier 4 students who are applying to come to the UK. They are typically interviewed, and that's to just confirm they are in fact interested and engaged in the degree that they've applied for, but also to reiterate that they do meet the English language requirement. So again, a useful precedent. Another example would be potentially for employers to certify that they are happy with the English language requirement. As mentioned by the previous speaker, there are various interviews, etc., as part of the recruitment process, as you would usually expect. And through that process, employers are able to confirm that the individuals do have the required level of English to carry out their day-to-day responsibilities. Again, there's precedent in that in terms of employers certifying maintenance, why not English language as well? So that's a practical solution on which we will focus moving forward. Another example of the potential issues that we need to address is travel documents. So when you apply for a UK visa, you would typically submit your original national passport, which must be valid for at least 6 months. Now, if you are displaced, you have fled persecution from your national government, so you cannot, of course, avail yourselves to them to look for a new passport. So what are the alternatives? There are potential documents from the UNHCR, that's a route that we're considering, or also UKVI issued documents, so by the UK government. Again, the considerations there with the work that we're doing is sort of preliminary, it's all still quite embryonic, but there is precedent, and we think that is a barrier that can be overcome. There are various other issues that we need to address, but we will work with TBB to get through those and look to introduce this new sub-visa category, which we hope will facilitate the movement of displaced people to the UK to take up jobs which are already identified as shortage within the UK. We hope to work towards a system which is streamlined, straightforward, supports speed to landing in the UK and surety for business, because above all, this needs to be led by business to help you to bring talent to the UK to support your business needs. Thank you very much. That's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Gemma. So, partnerships are key to providing a holistic approach to our recruitment, immigration, and integration model, allowing businesses to concentrate on business. Collaborating with different organizations brings out new perspectives, ideas, and projects. We are creating an ecosystem to make this model work for you. For example, with Reset, we are soon launching a community welcome project where volunteers will support our candidates to settle into communities in the UK. Another recent partnership is with Breaking Barriers, a leading refugee employment and integration organisation in the UK. Breaking Barriers will help us to connect our displaced candidates with UK employers, and their CEO, Matthew Powell, is our next speaker. Matthew founded Breaking Barriers after realising how little support was available for refugees settling in the UK. He was recently recognised by Forbes 30 Under 30 as one of Europe's leading social entrepreneurs and does amazing work helping to break down barriers to employment that refugees face. So here is Matthew to tell you more about our collaborative partnership.
Fab, thank you very much. And I'm just going to share my screen very quickly, as I do have a couple of slides. Cool. So I'm going to start with a bit of an introduction to Breaking Barriers. As you've just heard, Breaking Barriers is a charity that I started about 5.5 years ago in response to some research I was doing around why integration outcomes, whereby employment was a major indicator, were particularly poor for refugees in the UK. I won't go into a huge amount of detail as to the reasons why, but what it did show was that a combination of some generic factors, such as a lack of UK work experience, and some factors directly linked to the nature of the UK asylum system, such as gaps on the CV created by an asylum process where asylum seekers cannot work, created a number of barriers that made it difficult for even the refugees closest to the labour market to compete for work with the native population. So I saw an opportunity to engage the private sector, specifically around recruitment, in a way that the sector really had struggled to previously, and particularly in the UK. So I wanted to work with them, A, to fund some of the support that we know refugees need when they arrive, so around cultural orientation, CV writing, etc., as well as to work with them to develop alternative recruitment pathways that can overcome some of the barriers created by the asylum system. So fast forward 5 and a bit years, and we're now a 30+ strong team working with over 20 businesses. And I've listed, apologies, I've got a dog that's just run into my office. As you can see, we work with a range of businesses from, excuse me 1 second.
What kind of dog have you got, Matt?
This is honestly the worst timing. A dog has just run into my office and I'm having to hold him to prevent him from yapping at someone else that has just come into my office. So apologies for that.
No worries.
Hopefully that gave you a bit of time to digest the slide that I just put up. So as you can see, we work with a range of businesses from a range of different sectors, all household names, and the majority of whom are big multinational companies. So we work with a number of banks such as Bank of America, UBS, S&P Global, Wells Fargo. We work with retailers such as IKEA and Gucci, law firms, Herbert Smith Freehills, Mayer Brown, and other organizations like Grant Thornton, Western Union, and Ipsos Mori. So businesses that have all essentially committed to supporting and hiring refugees in the UK. Now, the question I get asked most is probably why or how did you manage to convince all of these businesses to hire refugees? And my not so secret to our success is a simple one, and that's I moved the ask from being a philanthropic one, such as businesses doing this because it was the right thing to do, to developing a business case with organizations. So what value can we add to you as an organization by you hiring refugees? And whether that's to improve diversity, improve brand association and PR, savings on higher retention levels and lower absenteeism, or to fill areas of skills shortage such as this, the business case is there, and the big business case is a particularly strong one. And my next slide is including a quote from one of our corporate partners, Ipsos Mori, so their head of talent, Louise Maycock. And she says here, Ipsos has made a commitment globally to employ refugees and has been working in partnership with Breaking Barriers since early 2019. Breaking Barriers is a compassionate and forward-thinking charity. They're responsive and dedicated to ensuring the best outcomes for clients and partners. We have offered placements to 3 of their clients in project management, coding, and in our client organization, and we're continuing to seek more. All of the refugees in the placements are a real asset to our business, and they are now performing valuable roles and very popular members of the team. We look forward to continuing our fruitful relationship with Breaking Barriers and welcoming their clients into our business. I think what Louise highlights here in the quote is not only the value added to them as an organization by hiring refugees, but also the types of roles we are supporting people into. One of the misconceptions amongst businesses that we quite often face is that the majority of people we're supporting into low-skilled entry-level roles. Well, the reality is that we're supporting as many people into skilled professional roles such as project management, coding, and other areas of the organization. Now, we're particularly excited about this partnership with TBB. And why am I so excited? Well, as a gentleman from UNHCR said, there's dozens of reasons why this is the right thing to do. But I'm very excited because I know that this is going to strengthen our proposition to businesses and develop that business case even further. We know that the economy is shifting towards a Brexit that is only potentially going to increase areas of skill shortage, as well as a digitalization of the economy as a consequence of COVID that I think is also going to expose additional areas of skill shortage too. So I'm going to leave you with one final point. Having subsequently reflected on the process of hiring refugees with our corporate partners over the last 3 or 4 years, the one thing that they've said, or the one feeling they've said they had when they went into the process is feeling incredibly daunted by it. But having now looked back on the process, they've all said consistently that that fear was unwarranted, and actually the process is far simpler. So the reassurance I would like to provide businesses is that there is a precedent for doing this. There's a blueprint. There are a number of organizations already doing it, and there are organizations like ourselves, TBB, that are here to simplify the process for you and guide you through it. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So in the UK, we want Talent Beyond Boundaries to be more than a business transaction. We want to build a community of our employers, our hired people, our funders, and our partners. So next year, we are planning to hold a Christmas ball where we can look back over the year and celebrate what we have achieved. And we hope that you will be there to join us. So I will now hand over to Ian Robinson, who has been a great supporter of Talent Beyond Boundaries. Ian is a partner at Fragomen and has been working in immigration for 15 years. He also manages Fragomen's UK government strategies practice, where he works helping key decision makers in and around government understand how business can be better supported by the immigration system. So here is Ian to answer your questions.
Yeah, so thank you. As you've heard, I'm a partner with Fragomen, but for some reason, I'm not to partner with curtains. I've realized on every single webinar I've done with our clients, I promise by the end of lockdown, we will have curtains. We have a few questions which I will come to and bring in several other people for. Just the first point that I want to make is you wouldn't, and you've heard this before, you wouldn't be on here if you didn't see the potential to help people. But it's got to work for you as an employer. And you've heard about how skilled these people are. I just want to stress, and Gemma and Matt and others have made the point, there is complexity to this, but whether it's Fragomen or another advisor, that complexity can be worked through and made simple. Anyone, and there are several of my own clients on the call at the moment, they don't need to worry about how complex it is behind the scenes for us, because when they initiate a case, we get them the permission that's needed. This scheme will be more complicated, but it's all completely doable for you. And I just wanted to, I was talking to someone from TBB about it earlier in the week, and I wanted to stress that. We have a few questions. So the first, if it's okay, Marina, I'm going to group a couple of questions and come to you. We were asked about what extra support would displaced people get over and above what a regular Tier 2 migrant would receive on arrival? And likewise, what help do they get connected with housing, schooling, and so on? And what's required of employers through this resettlement process?
Of course, thank you. And a really valid question, and one that we sort of factor in as we made our approach into the UK based on our experience in Australia and Canada. So what we've done is work from the end backwards. So the end goal is a fully integrated skilled worker in the UK with a family who is supported and then worked backwards. And the way that we've done that is through a number of partnerships. So the first is with Breaking Barriers. So Breaking Barriers, one of the key lessons that we learned in Australia and Canada, where Talent Beyond Boundaries have operated close to 4 years now, is that if a family is sponsored, the most empowered person of that family within a month of arriving in the country is pulled out and going to work, leaving behind a spouse and children to sort of manage their settlement, which is sometimes very difficult. So we work with partners like Breaking Barriers to see what support we can give to spouses, for example, to help with English language training, to help them upskill and them participating in labour mobility and labour access in the UK. So that's the first and very pragmatic thing. The second support that we are working on, as Sarah alluded to, is a partnership with Reset. So Reset is an organisation in the UK that works with community sponsorship, where members of the community join into a group and receive a refugee. Now, the current system is that they receive people out of the most vulnerable cohort and assist them in integrating into the UK. What we're doing is creating a parallel framework where we tap into those community groups, of which there are almost 230 across the UK, to connect them with our displaced talent candidates as and when they get a job offer and their visa is happening, so that an integration plan can be made for them. And that's where we talk about, you know, where the best housing situation would be, schooling and so on. The other really important thing is that we ask employers to treat our candidates as they would any other international recruit. And so this might mean providing some assignment services. So I've just got some sort of statistics or some anecdotes on what other employers have done. So 80% of candidates received free initial accommodation on arrival to the destination country of between 2 weeks and 2 months. 80% of candidates received assistance with home search and arranging permanent accommodation, with some employers even leasing accommodation under their company name or co-signing as a guarantor. 70% of candidates were provided orientation services, such as showing candidates around the area, where to get things. But even as Charlotte spoke to about Iris, the buddy system and the mentoring system, 60% of candidates were provided with a cash allowance to transition their move into the country. So they're going out of displacement where they don't have bank accounts and savings into, you know, maybe a month of not payment. So how to bridge that gap. And then another wide range of supports, including purchasing groceries on arrival, provision of furniture, subsidized health insurance, tax advice, English language classes for the spouse, rent subsidies, utilities paid for, etc. So the extent of support from an employer is really dependent on the employer's capacity, but also what they would do for any other assignment. But our approach is holistic, and we ensure that local partners who know what they're doing and they're specialized are part of this journey, and we bring them into the fold as and when necessary to make sure that the process is as streamlined as possible. So that was a very long answer to saying we consider settlement and integration as part of the entire package.
No, that was a good answer. That's brilliant. Thank you. And then another question we had was, where else do Fragomen help TBB? So we already help you in Canada. Of course, we're speaking to Irish colleagues at the moment about the potential to land people over there. Talent Beyond Boundaries already operates in Australia as well, and I know that we have some interaction with you there. This isn't, we want to help. We don't want it to be a monopoly. We do hope, just as we do with any service we provide, that we can build up expertise, of course. But wherever you are in the world, if you would like to talk to TBB about finding skilled people to fill vacancies there, then I'm sure Marina and her team can have the conversation. And of course, in the background, we would be around if we can be useful. There's no obligation to work with us, but if we could be useful to support, we just want to help, really. Please add any other questions in the comment box if you have any. The other that I was going to pick up was, what do changes to the UK immigration system mean to all of this? So firstly, the changes that are planned for January will be helpful. So removing the cap on numbers will help people move in more quickly. Removing the resident labour market test means that you don't need to offer to a suitable UK candidate over and above a more qualified displaced candidate. Helpful changes there. Overall, overall, the immigration system that we have can work, and as you've seen, has worked already for displaced people. The new system will be that bit easier, and we've had really lovely, encouraging conversations with Home Office ministers in the House of Commons and the House of Lords about how some of the friction can be further removed. No need to wait for those to bear fruit, even though I'm sure they will. It can happen now if you want it to. Not now as in today, bit of a lead in time, but it can definitely happen. We've just had a question. Is there a need for volunteer immigration attorneys in other countries? I think that's from Maria. I think, is that for you, Marina?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that, and sorry to be hijacking this entire Q&A, but the simple answer is we'd love volunteers and help where it's available. An interesting thing for other countries is working out what the pathways are and what needs to change so that labour mobility can work. What we found in the UK is that very slight adjustments need to be made to really level the playing field, and that's then informed how we advocate and how we pitch to employers and how we can sort of say this should be any other normal recruitment and visa pathways. So looking at other countries and other immigration systems is something we're really interested in. So we're actively looking at expanding into the EU. I mean, our entry point there is Ireland, where we're working closely with Fragomen. Interestingly, we have a project. This is more of a source side, but we're working with partners in Colombia and in Kenya for bringing candidates into Canada. So looking at situations there. So absolutely, I will share my contact details at the conclusion. So if anyone does want to get involved, I'm happy to have a chat.
Brilliant. Well, I will finish there. I think we've dealt with all of the questions. So I think I'm passing back to you anyway, Marina, in a second. I just wanted to say thank everyone for joining, and Gemma and I really hope that you find it helpful. We're really genuinely quite proud to be able to be part of this and contributing in whatever small way. So thank you, really. Oh, and sorry, we've just had one more question. Kerwin has asked, are the talent getting help in terms of how to navigate the job market, how to present themselves as candidates, and similar coaching corporates typically offer to candidates as part of your attraction initiatives and activities? Is that for you,
It's a fantastic, yes, it's a fantastic question, Cohen, and thank you so much. We absolutely do work with partners to set up mock interviews and to, talk about soft skill and things. We have partnerships with courses that are, that provide things like cross-cultural business cultures and soft skills and so on. And I'll tell you a really great story. We had one candidate who was preparing for an interview with Accenture in Sydney, and we had someone from McKinsey in Toronto interview him, and halfway through stopped the mock interview and offered him a job then and there. So this is someone who was stateless in Lebanon, had never had his name in full and a date of birth on a document, and in one sitting got offered a job with Accenture and McKinsey. So it goes to the value of our candidates, but absolutely something that we'd love to do in the UK. So again, happy to have a chat about how we can best prepare our candidates for coming into the UK. And this is the call out to employers. So, the ways in which we can be supported are firstly, and most obviously through recruitment, but also looking at things like mock interviews and interview preparation, and also any support in terms of, if there is any foundations or any funding support, just for while we roll this program out to catalyze it so that TBB can disappear and pass on to our partners. So that's a fantastic question.
Thank you. And just, it's perhaps not for me to say it, but if any of you do have CSR budgets that would be interested, CSR teams with budgets who would be interested in co-funding a project such as TBB. I've learned from experience with several other charities in the UK, it's hard to get funding for immigration charities. yeah, if you have people who would be interested, that would be brilliant. And then I'll finish before passing over to you with a question from Alan. For those who are refugees outside of the UK, what safeguards are you putting in place to retain and maintain their protection status? That's something, and Marina may want to add to this, but that's one of the conversations that we are having with the Home Office at the moment, both in terms of their status outside of the UK, but also ways to recognise their status once they're here. But Marina, is there anything you would want to add?
The only thing I'll add to this is that our candidates in Lebanon, for example, could not be registered with UNHCR since 2015. So even though they could be sort of listed as people of concern, they have not been able to actually get that protection status because of the sheer number of people in Lebanon. So as Ian said, part of our advocacy is to really work out how to make sure that once a person is here, they're able to remain here for a durable solution. What we're really cognizant of, and this is why we say it's not charity, is that it has to work. The consequences of, you know, doing this for charity and the candidate not fitting in the team with the work, etc., is that the employment relationship will break down, which is something that we have to deal with as for the tier 2. And so what we're trying to do is look at extending the curtailment period of, you know, looking for another job, so an employment switch. Again, I will say we've had one experience where one of our candidates was made redundant due to the pandemic as an engineer in Australia. He then ended up getting a job within a month on a project that's more specialised to his skill as a water engineer. So we completely back ourselves and back our candidates to be able to find another employer, but we're just looking at extending time. And then, of course, leaving the door open to applying for protection and asylum in the UK, you know, if things completely fall apart. But again, in our experience in Australia and Canada, that has not yet happened.
Great. And then I'll end with and answer the question from Adele, who is moving to a more distributed workforce with working remotely being fully supported. That will create more flexibility. That is something that all parties involved can make to work, frankly. And Adele, if you wanted to email, I'm sure Marina afterwards, or whomever, then we can definitely help. Thank you. And I'll go off camera. I'll and look for some new curtains, I think. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you, everyone. So we're nearing the end of our presentation, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for participating and for hearing us out today. I wanted to thank our speakers, so David, Sangeeta, Gemma, Halef, Charlotte, Matthew, Akshaya and Sarah are incredible volunteers, and they literally keep the cogs of our operation in the UK moving. So very grateful for their participation and their support of TBB. The takeaway messages here are, firstly, this is an unseen and untapped potential of talent that your company can both use to fill a skills shortage, but also lift out of displacement. We call it a win-win-win because it's a win for the UK to receive a humanitarian applicant who is a contributor to the society, a win to a team who gets a skilled employee, and a win to our candidates who get a second chance at life. Sarah mentioned at the beginning that I have a refugee background myself, and I was separated from my father during the siege of Sarajevo. We were reunited, we resettled in Australia, and within 6 months of arriving, my dad became a telecommunications engineer at Vodafone. And what he said was, if only I got a job, we wouldn't have lived through a siege and you wouldn't have grown up in a refugee camp. That is the motivating factor. Using skills to leverage and empower people is what we're here to do, and with you, we can make it happen. Offering a job is the trigger to making all this happen. And with our partners, we can make it happen and we can make it easy. And so the takeaway message, going back to what I started with, is you can be part of the solution. Our partners are there to make the process as seamless as possible. We didn't want to make it look like a complicated process, but for every step of the way, there is a specialist ready to step in to make sure that end to end, you are completely supported in this. And finally, it is not only the good thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. And for every single employer we have engaged in Australia and Canada, they have come back for more candidates because they see not only the value of the skill, but the value of the human capital, the human cost and the human contribution that has been made through this program. So we will follow this webinar up with an email about how to get in touch. The action items really are giving us the opportunity to show you our talent. We can arrange times in which we can showcase our talent pool to you, or we can specifically do a technical check of some of the skill shortages you have if we have your position descriptions with our candidates, and just letting us speak to you about how we can create partnerships that are scalable and sustainable and here for the long run, because all we want to do is normalize this as both a recruitment pipeline and as an immigration pathway. So I will end it there. I thank you all very much for participating and for your interest, and hope to hear from you soon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.